My name is Michael. Watch 4 seconds of me in front of walls and enjoy the rest of this vlog. So we are here in Philadelphia. I've never done a double-decker bus tour before, so let's do that. So this is like a hop-on, hop-off tour. Sweet.
Philly is the 6th largest city in the United States, home to 1.6 million people. It was the nation's first capital.
All right, so now I'm trying to find something iconic. I'll give you a hint. So that was the famous statue of the legendary boxer Sylvester Stallone. These are the famous steps that he ran up in Sylvester Stallone Part 1. I don't want to walk all these damn steps. There's a lot of steps. Couldn't find an elevator or an escalator. Probably gonna have to take a couple breaks. We did it. It took a little over half an hour, but we did it. All right, so we're in Philadelphia. I'm here to meet Luke, who makes these pretty cool pieces of art. You'll see.
There are amazing artists that are doing very cultural, significant social work. For me, the more interesting stuff is just the odd experience of life. From a young age, seeing the set of Beetlejuice and seeing the weird AstroTurf and seeing the hands and the people coming up and moving the stuff around and stuff. Just that is the coolest thing to me. I like the weird extended Marvel universe with the new Guardians movie where it's Ego the Living Planet. I was like, yes, this is amazing. Kurt Russell is Ego the Living Planet. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. My mom bought me Legos when I was a kid, and I just loved not really following the sets, but making up all my own structures. And I remember telling my dad, I really want to go to art school. I think this is it. And the art room in school became the place where I was oh, I'm actually this is where I'm supposed to be. Every time I had to make a life choice, it was always very clear to me that it was going to be around how can I continue getting better and improving as an artist. I ended up at grad school at Rhode. And not to get super emotional about it, but it gave me some purpose. Silk screening, you're starting with, personally, drawings on paper, and then going in layer by layer, starting to understand which colors I'm going to use. For this print, it was 10 colors. Some of them are larger color areas, some of them are just small details. You'll take all of these transparencies, you'll take some ink, you'll lay it down, squeegee it through, and as you have your paper or your wood or whatever you're printing on the other side, you'll just be able to print straight onto it. As you can see, it comes together layer by layer to transform into a full color print. When you're drawing it, you're thinking about all the colors. You have to really plan out how complicated you're going to make these things. Colors are sort of layered, and then you have to think about which order they're being printed in, So in a lot of ways, you can get these effects in all kinds of digital techniques that are available, but it's just something that I personally really appreciate. I collect prints myself, seeing the ink layered on top of one another. Even Burger King, Star Wars cups from the 80s, I love that. You see the ink caked on, you can see through the back of it where it's all the layers. I love that kind of stuff. I remember being in the studio late night in the silkscreen shop. I had basically made what was a sort of city, and again, it was fairly abstract. I was staring at it, trying to figure it out. I was these are kind of neat. I started really imagining building it. And I was well, that's sort of the next logical step. You've been drawing these kinds of things forever, why not just build them? From then on, it was building these cities, making these buildings, just fabricating sculptures and thinking of new and interesting ways to do that. One of the things in my work that always comes out to me, when I look back on it, is the idea of growth and the idea of, again, just discovery. I want to be able to have those moments with my art. I want it to be just as exciting. I want someone to look under it and see all of the weird drawings and things that you won't see if you just look at a photo, but there's an experience to looking at these sculptures where things have been considered, but they've also been fabricated in a way where it kind of hides the work. So there's a sort of element of mystery into how they've been put together too. I don't know, almost like miniature scavenger hunt going on in all my work. And think about it as a more simplified conversation between the above and below.
Would you want to live in one of your worlds?
People have asked me that before. I would be terrified to be in one of those spaces. It wouldn't work at all. I think art is critical just as an expression and a mirror of culture and what is happening in the world. When we think about art, especially growing up, we think about museums and we think about preserving really sort of like historically significant moments. I do wonder about this notion of like credibility and like how we value things that are happening now.
Is there something the viewer can do outside of maybe visiting a museum to help support the arts?
Well, I think a big part of appreciating it is like participating in it. Once you sort of have some experience doing like any of it, you might sort of start seeing it more. Like, just make something.
A lot of people went insane. This is now considered the most haunted building in the United States.
Along with being a former penitentiary, former place for bad people.
Welcome to Eastern State Penitentiary. I'm actor and director Steve Buscemi. I'll be one of your guides as you visit the prison. You'll also hear from former inmates, guards, and the people who have studied and preserved this historic building. These are their real voices.
I was scared to death. You didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, I used to tell them outright, you try to hurt me, I'm going to try to kill you. Tit for tat, pal.
If you looked at the walls outside, they were like 25 or 30 feet in the air. But inside, they were like 60 or 70 feet in the air.
Eastern State is without a doubt the most influential prison that was ever built.
Let this be a lesson to you guys. Don't do anything bad or illegal, or at least get away with it. No, scratch that last part. That's the wrong message, you youngsters. No Wi-Fi, no PlayStation, no flat screen TVs. It would suck.
Scientists and physicians are some of the most creative and underappreciated heroes on the planet. I jumped at the chance to meet and interview Dr. Stephen Hunt, who is a brilliant man making a huge impact in the battle against cancer. This interview doesn't do his work proper justice, but hopefully it'll push you to learn and do more.
Everything is interesting to me. I want to read every single article, even though it's not my field. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm very interested in fibroblasts and cancer, and here's a fish model of it, and there's some novel mechanism. I mean, novel. You caught me right there. Like, I want to see, I want to see what it was. I had a younger brother who was born when I was 12 years old who had cerebral palsy. My mother had contracted a virus during her pregnancy called cytomegalovirus. He is unable to talk, unable to really control his body at all. So he's truly like, many people would consider him a vegetable, to be honest, but he's not. He has an emotional, and I loved him. He slept in my bed every night as a baby and up through 3 years old when I left home. I was there in the hospital and I realized I was watching all these doctors. I'd never interacted with doctors before. And so we walked outside. I was with my grandmother. She said, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I'm going to be a doctor." Okay, well, I'll be home soon and we'll go to karate then. I was looking for a school with a small student-to-faculty ratio, and so I found Marlborough College in Vermont. I wrote to this doctor down at Boston University. He never responded to my letters. He was an MD, PhD, a neurologist. It seemed like what he was working on made sense to what my brother's condition was. So I hitchhiked down to Boston from southern Vermont where I was, and I showed up in his lab one day and I said, "Hey, you never answered my letters." And he said, "Well, kid, I don't have any money for you, but if you want to come work for free, I'll let you work on this project." And then from there, got into some great medical schools, including Stanford. I came to Penn, which is arguably the best interventional radiology program in the country. I was chief resident, I was chief fellow. I'm now faculty here. I get to go to work every day smiling, saying, "I'm going to go fuck cancer." It's just, I love it. I love what I do. Did you see they're consulting Dr. Google here? Translational labs are few and far between. Most people are either focused on the science alone, completely divorced from the clinical space that it's going to go into, or they're focused on, let's say, disease. We started the PIGI Lab in 2012. It stands for Penn Image Guided Interventions Lab. We always think of new ways of killing cancer, and that's what my lab is focused on. There's at this point about 25 people in our lab. What we're about is trying to harness innovation and bring it to the clinic as quickly as possible. So everything that we do in the lab, in animals and in cells, we then try to have a clinical trial that it develops into for our patients. We do this in our lab all the time. We say, that's a high-risk project. That's fine. I don't mind that it's a high-risk project. What's its time to failure? Is this time to failure 3 years and we're going to tie up a huge amount of lab resources? Then no, we can't afford to do that. Is its time to failure 3 months and you're going to go for broke and spend a lot of money, but it's going to be done in 3 months? Do it. Give it a shot. People always ask, why do you have to use animals in research? And as much as possible, we try to do everything before we would do it in an animal to work out the kinks. But in the end, you simply can't do very many experiments. You simply can't get the answer to how is this going to happen in a human without looking at an animal. People always ask, what's the point of being an MD PhD? What the MD PhD allows you to do is, on the one hand, you can talk to science. On the other hand, you have that clinical knowledge as well, and sometimes a clinical practice like me, where I'm thinking about that patient from earlier today who's, if this experiments work and he's trying it out, he's choosing to be one of these rats. He's choosing to try out this novel therapy that maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. The clinical work drives the research side as well because it puts faces to names. So if you look up there is a patient flyer is actually from a funeral, Fatima Karoma. That's the kind of interaction you have with people that's very powerful, that lasts with you forever, and you never forget them. One thing to see is you see all of this lead, because all of what we're doing is under x-rays. We have to protect our own bodies with lead. So we wear leaded glasses.
Ready to go into battle.
Ready to go into battle.
Why do I feel like I belong in a kitchen right now?
If you have a family member who has a medical condition, I don't care if that medical condition is multiple sclerosis or breast cancer or whatever, get involved with an organization on that and help spread awareness around it. If everybody went around asking how can I make somebody's day better, the world would be a much better place.
Positive movement! Who are we? Positive movement! And besides the fact that we promote put down the guns and pick up some drugs for a better community, what do? We try to keep positive minds!
This city has a lot of depth and culture, and I really enjoyed being here. I gotta give a big thank you again to Dr. Hunt and to Luke. You guys were awesome.